in the English language has the most definitions is the question that I will answer by the end of this show. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the More You Know Mondays. The more you know, the more you grow. And this week on the show, I will be talking about Queen Charlotte. But before we get into that, you know what we have to do? We have to start off the show with some positive vibes. And I do that every week in the form of Monday affirmations. And this week is unlike any other week in the fact that I'm still starting the episode with a quote. And this week is no different. If you're new here, welcome to the show. And if you're a returning listener, then, thank you. New or old, it doesn't matter, because it's all the same when you come and listen to this show. So, this week's quote is by Nagato, and it goes like this. Sometimes you must hurt in order to know, fall in order to grow, lose in order to gain, because life's greatest lessons are learned through pain. And I really love that quote, not only because it's just quite really poetic, I also love it just because of the fact of how inspiring it is that you can find inspiration through your pain. And obviously that's really maybe kind of dark to think about or understand, in the sense of pain is like the lowest level, or if you're hurt or something like that, it feels like it's the lowest level that you could be, or the lowest energy levels, or hurt is like an emotion that you really need to heed. Or in society, it makes it feel as though that you need to heed it or you need to protect yourself so you're not hurt. But in doing that, you're making yourself safe of a situation that you ultimately have no control over. So being able to feel pain and live there and not make it be your existence is a hard thing to not only equate but also to do. And sometimes you have to feel this pain so that you're able to, in the sense, I'm thinking of it like a phoenix going through the ashes. So you're able to rise from the ashes through all that pain and still achieve and do better and do more. And I only see this in the equation, or in my life, in the form of how through the pain of losing my dad, it feels as though it felt in the beginning that it was like I was in a pit and I didn't know how to get out of that pit, and I went through a period of just being down. And although I used to paint this happy-go-lucky portrait on my face, I wasn't really feeling that. I was just feeling really down, and it took a long time for me to go through that before I came on the other side and realized that, whoa, I've learned so much about myself through going through that pain. And it's not even just going through the pain of losing my father. It could be going through the pain of a relationship, or many relationships where I've learned so much about myself after the breakup than I knew about myself while I was in the relationship. So I've been able to go to my future relationships a better version of myself than I was in the previous one, which is good, you know? You should learn things from your experiences and the things that you go through. Otherwise, kind of what's the point in going through them? Like, it's kind of funny in the sense of, as a creative, I always used to look at other people's stories, like other creative, like famous people, and think, oh wow, like these people they've had all this struggle, like, and no wonder they've been able to like overcome all the odds so that they could be something or do better than their surroundings or what was around them, was because they they saw that that was the only way out for them. So they fought the pain, fought through the pain, learned their lessons about themselves, and was able to achieve more because of that. And that's what I used to look at when I was younger and thinking, what pain have I gone through? I haven't gone through any struggles. Like, even thinking I wanted to write back then, and I was just like, what? I don't have anything that's fueling this. That I was wishing any of these bad things or breakups or feeling pain or losing people or anything like that. But it's kind of, to me, it's interesting that how much you do learn about yourself when going through these situations. So my Monday affirmations, summed up, basically comes up to the point of not taking for granted the things that you go through. Like, although pain and struggle are hard things, it shouldn't be something that you just brush to the side. You can learn a lot from your past and the things that you go through and how you move forward into your future to better your life. And I think that that's where I'm going to leave my my Monday affirmations, and hope that you have taken something from that and that you gain something, if not from my words, but from the quote itself, because it's something interesting to think about. Your pain doesn't need to just be pain that you internalize. It could be something that is used in an external force, which, I mean, in the form of, for me, I use it in the form of writing. I write things down. I feel like it's better for me to have it written on a page instead of it festering around in my mind, you know? Because then at least when it's written on the page, to me, it feels like I can leave it there, and it, like I said, it's no longer in my head, and it's something that I can something that I can repeatedly revisit. So I know that is a thought that I'm not going to forget about, because I don't often forget the words that I write down. And that's why I write things down. But anyway, this episode, as I said in the beginning, is going to be about Queen Charlotte. Now, Queen Charlotte, if she sounds like a name that you've probably heard before, it's probably because you have, you know? Queen Charlotte is a character in an episode of, not an episode, in the series Bridgerton. So if you have seen the series Bridgerton, then, I mean, if you have seen it, then you would know of the character Queen Charlotte. Now, out of all of the characters within Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte is probably one of the only real characters which is based on someone real. Although she does have somewhat of a larger than life character, some of this is based on historical facts. So Queen Charlotte reigned, or was born, on the 19th of May, 1744. She was the youngest daughter of Duke Charles Louis Frederick of Mecklenburg-Strelitz and Princess Elizabeth of Albertina of Saxe-Heidelbergsen. So basically, Mecklenburg-Strelitz was a small northern German Dutchy in the Holy Roman Empire. So with Charlotte being the youngest daughter of the Duke Charles, she was quite reserved, and really, from most of my research, it seems like she was quite reserved and kept herself to herself. She was actually brought up at Schloss, which is the lower castle in Morrow. So when King George III of Britain succeeded the throne in 1760, he was only 22 years old, and he was unmarried. And out of all of the lovely maidens and lasses and princesses in the land that he could have had in all the land, not just England, but all the lands, King George III, he chose 17-year-old Princess Charlotte, because for him, it was an obvious choice. Though these aren't just my words. These are actually the words that are on royal.uk/Queen Charlotte. So from my research, it says that she was the obvious choice. And I'm just like, what makes her the obvious choice? But I assume that he had been courting around, looking for a wife. There was no one that fitted his satisfactory level until he heard of Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz in northern Germany. Now, like I said, at the time, she was only 17 years old. And with her being a very young princess, and times being what they were in the 18th century, to me, it kind of seems like she didn't really have much of a say in the process of whether she wanted to go along with this or not. This is what was going to happen. So when the king announced to his council in July 1761 that he intended to marry Princess Charlotte, he had an escort that was led by the Earl of Harcourt, and they departed for Germany to bring Charlotte back to England. So they departed in July, sometime in July, and they didn't arrive in Germany until the 14th of August, 1761. So it took them July, I can't even think of the months, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So hang on. July, August, September. Oh, so it only took them a month. So depending on when they left England, it was sometime in July, and it took them around a month for them to travel to Germany. But you need to imagine, back in those days, traveling to Germany from England wasn't just in a plane. It would have been by boat. So yeah, I can imagine it must have taken about 20 days or so for them to travel from England to Germany, but they made it in the end. When they arrived, they were received by Charlotte's brothers, the current Duke, and There was a marriage license that was signed. And then there was parties for 3 days of celebrations and, hopeful futures. When they decided to leave after the 3 days of celebration on the 17th of August, the king and the princess departed for Britain. Apparently their voyage was very difficult, and they went through 3 storms during their sea travel, but luckily and thankfully they arrived in London on the 7th of September. On the 8th of September. And then you have to remember also at the same time, with King George going to Germany to meet his wife for the first time that he decided that he was going to marry, I guess it was like modern day Tinder if you think about it. Like, he must have just seen a painting of what Prince Charlotte looked like, and then just decided from this painting, like, yeah, she is buff and I want to marry her. And he was only 22 years old. And I guess, like, at the same time, I guess life expectancy was kind of different around the 18th century. But still, at 22 years old, he was playing his medieval Tinder. And while looking through the paintings of different princesses from, like I said, across all the lands, he saw Princess Charlotte and he was like, yeah, swipe right, I'm gonna marry her. And with that swiping of right, and they had their 3 days of partying, and around 3 p.m, they arrived back in London on the 8th of September. And then 6 hours later, so around 9 p.m, they would get married. So Queen Charlotte, I will say Queen Charlotte because she does become Queen Charlotte, but at the time of this, what I'm talking about, she was only a princess before she got married. So she met her future husband, partied with him and his party of escorts and her whole royal family and her brothers. And then after leaving Germany to go to England, within 6 hours of her arriving, she became queen, or married to the king, which made her queen. But anyway, Princess Charlotte and King George III, their wedding took place at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace. Their coronation took place on the 22nd of September the same year. And together, they had 15 children. Altogether, it was 9 boys and 6 girls, who included Prince George of Wales, who was born in 1762. So that was less than a year after they got married. Then there was Prince Frederick, who was the Duke of York and Albany, and he was born in 1763. So the next year, another one. Prince William, who was Duke of Clarence, and he was born in 1765. Then there was Charlotte, who was Princess Royal, and she was born in 1767. No, she was born in 1766. Then there was Prince Edward, who was the Duke of Kent, and he was born in 1767. Then there was Prince Augustus Sophia, who was born in 1768. Then Princess Elizabeth, who was born in 1770. Prince Ernest, who was Duke of Cumberland, and he was born in 1771. Prince Augustus Frederick, and he was Duke of Sussex, and he was born in 1773. Prince Adolphus, Duke of Cambridge, and he was born in 1774. Princess Mary, Duchess of Gloucester, who was born in 1776. Princess Sophia, born in 1777. Prince Octavius, born in 1779. Prince Alfred, born in 1880. And Princess Amelia, born in 1783. So pretty much they had 15 children consecutively for around 15 years. Like each year, pretty much of their marriage, since they were married, they had a child. And to me, that's kind of crazy. But I guess back in those days, it was kind of a normal thing to have a bigger family. Whereas nowadays in our time, it's less common for people to have bigger families. Like a normal sized family for us nowadays is maybe you have parents will have 2 or 3 kids, and that's like the average size family. And some people that do still have big families, but it's like maybe I guess again it depends, and it's in different cultures. It may be normal for you to have bigger families than it is, but in I guess in the Western world, is which the world that I live in, living in the United Kingdom, we live by, I guess, the idea of a nuclear family. And when you think about that in the sense, you're thinking about 2-3 kids and adults, 2 parents and 2-3 kids, like a kind of nuclear family. But an interesting fact about King George III and Queen Charlotte's life together is kind of one of the points that quite pinnacle, in the sense that most of their time, their official residence, rather, I should say, was St. James's Palace. And as with most royals, one property is usually not enough for them. And King George III was no different. So while they were living in St. James's Palace, he bought a nearby property. This nearby property was Buckingham House. And when the King and Queen moved there in 1762, they made Buckingham House Buckingham Palace. And apparently Queen Charlotte loved it. 14 of her children were born there, and it came to be known as the Queen's House. So I'm going to come back to the reference of Bridgerton just for a second, in the sense of the casting for the character, or even the actress that was used as, or to play as, I got there in the end, Queen Charlotte, was the amazing Guyanese British actress Golda Rochevelle. And I hope I did say her surname correctly. But as I said, she's Guyanese, so she is black, which is kind of an interesting direction to go with Queen Charlotte, only in the sense of a lot of the paintings that you would see of her from history, she is depicted to be of, I guess, more fairer or lighter skin than someone of a black lady, which could be down to the time of which Queen Charlotte was a queen of, or the era of which she was a queen, which is known as the Age of Enlightenment. And for people that are kind of unfamiliar of around that time, it was a time where it was most fashionable for men and women to fashion themselves with makeup, whether it be mainly it would be powder of reds and whites. And when royal paintings are done, they're usually done in a way to highlight the receptor of the painting and highlight their best features. So because of that, it may have been that she is depicted in a lighter or fairer turn to what she actually looked like in live action. I'm just trying to think about how this would actually come out and play about. It's because history is one of those things that we can only look back over through texts and images that have been painted, but we don't 100% know that that's exactly how things looked, or is it just the eye of the artist that we're seeing? So Queen Charlotte's lineage has been traced back to her having African ancestry. And this descendant has been drawn back to her connection to the 15th century Portuguese nobleman, King Alfonso III of Portugal, who was born in 1210 and died in 1279. And this connection is said to be through a mistress that King Alfonso III of Portugal had. And this mistress was named as Madgranda, and she was born around 1230. And it's not really known when she may have passed away. But through this mistress, and I guess out of wedlock, and what you need to think about is the racial divide that we have now wouldn't have been anywhere close to what they had back then. Maybe things were not probably, I don't believe things were fully equal, but they may have been more on agreeing levels depending on class as opposed to race. I feel like the divide in race may have been more connected to the slave trade and the unfortunate domino effect that was created from how a group of people is seen by another group of people. And it's something that we're still trying to, I guess, deal with in current society. But I believe maybe someday in the future, I won't be alive, but hopefully someday in the future, this will be something that will be sorted out. But anyway, so that's where her connection to African descent comes from. Queen Charlotte has with her being the princess of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, she has a direct connection to an African branch of Portuguese royal houses, which are the Margarita de Castro e Sousa. Though with all of the lightening of the skin and the powdering down, one thing that the artist did take very close opinion to was her African features that are quite prevalent. If you look at any of the pictures or the paintings of her, you can see maybe a larger nose or bigger lips that have been accentuated by the artist. So it just begs the question that there may be some sort of mixed heritage and definitely some African descent in Queen Charlotte. Though I say definitely, as it's my belief from all the hours of countless research I've done into this subject and to Queen Charlotte, that I believe wholeheartedly that 100% she does have African descent. But like I said, I will leave some of the links to the sources that I've got my information from, so you can do your own learning and figure out and come up with your own solutions. I feel like that's not the right form of words I wanted to say. Come to your own conclusions, I think, was what I wanted to say. But we got there in the end, like always. So Queen Charlotte was also a lover of the arts and an amateur botanist. And it's because of her, or thanks to her, that we have Kew Gardens, because she helped to expand it. So we have to thank Queen Gardens, Queen Charlotte, Garden Charlotte. They don't even rhyme, so I don't even know why I got them mixed up in my mind. But we need to thank I said it again. We have to thank Queen Charlotte for her expanding Kew Gardens through her skills of amateur botany. And for anyone that doesn't know what botany is, it's kind of like the study of plants. So understanding plant science. So with that in mind, you need to also, or you must imagine that means that every plant in Kew Gardens was specifically hand selected because of what influence it may have on other plants. I'm not 100% sure on the science of plants. That's how I assume the botany of the planting works. But thanks to Queen Charlotte, we now have an extended Kew Gardens, which we wouldn't have had if she didn't have this amateur skills in it. Also, speaking of amateurs, the Queen, I say the Queen like I'm talking about Queen that we have as our monarch right now. I am talking about the Queen Charlotte, Queen Charlotte. Her and the King were also connoisseurs of music. And like I said, I was saying, speaking of amateurs, I mean that in the sense of an 8-year-old Mozart performed for the Queen, in which he was invited to perform and celebrate the 4th anniversary of the King's accession in 1764. So Mozart's Opus 3 was dedicated to Queen Charlotte when it was published on the 18th of January 1765. So Queen Charlotte was like an underground connoisseur. Like, she was listening to all the hip guys before they were popping. Like, her music master was Jean Christian Bach, who was the 11th son of the great composer Johann Sebastian Bach. So like, she was listening to stuff and she was jamming away, hearing like fresh cuts from Mozart's, what did he have? Symphony or concerto or whatever Mozart was working on. She heard it first. Before Mozart became Mozart, he was playing to Queen Charlotte. Like, that's crazy. That's like knowing a famous celebrity before they blew up and still being friends with them. And then just seeing them perform on stage is like, yo man, damn, you've come far, man. Like, I remember when we were just in school and you performing to like just me and your mum. Like, now look at you. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Another cool and interesting fact about Queen Charlotte is the fact of she wasn't exactly queen straight away, which I mean in the sense that she was Electress consort of Hanover. And this is because due to Salic law, the Salic law of succession, which states that a woman married to a king cannot inherit any land or royalty or power from their king if the king is incapacitated in any way to rule, or if he dies. Due to Salic law, that's what that states. It's a very early medieval law which dates back to around AD 500. And it's by the first Frankish king of Clovis. And the text is written in Latin, and it contains some of the earliest known instance of Old Dutch. So this law, this medieval law, influenced a lot of future European, a lot of the future, or I should say current, European legal system, which is kind of weird and to think about. But the Salic law, like I said, it attributes to excluding women from inheriting thrones, fiefs, or other properties. Regardless of this fact, unfortunately, King George III is, throughout history, very well known as the Mad King. And the reason for this is due to the mental health problems that he had experienced during his time in royal, or his time ruling. And you see that depicted in Bridgerton through, I guess, King George's outbursts, and which is why you see Queen Charlotte never wants to be alone with him. And this is shown through history through to the fact of him having violent outbursts. And due to this, he stepped down, or he was incapacitated to continue ruling. So in 1814 was the year that Queen Charlotte changed from being just the consort of Hanover and then actually became the Queen of Hanover, and then continued ruling for, well, until her death, which was 4 years later. But in entirety, she was the ruler, or the queen in name, from being married to King George III from the date that they got married on the 8th of September 1761 until the day she died on the 17th of November 1818. So which means she was, like most queens that we can take, for example, the queen that's currently ruling, she ruled for around 57 years. So that's almost 60 years she was in power for. And in that time, she was incredibly influential. Not to mention, she is also Prince Harry's great great, great, great grandmother. So that means that she is the great, 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 great grandmother to our current Queen Victoria. And if your mind has not been blown already in this episode with all the crazy facts and the connections to history, then I did promise that I would answer a question at the top of the show, because this is where I'm going to leave the Queen Charlotte information for today, unless I touch over it on another show. But like I said that I was going to answer a question at the end of the episode, and I always ring true to saying or doing what I say or do or say to do. I'm not sure if that made any sense, but what I mean is I have an answer to a question to give you. And the question that I posed at the beginning of the episode was, what word in the English language has the most definitions? And the answer to that question is set. So according to Guinness World Records, set has the largest number of meanings of any word in the English language, with it having 430 different senses listed in the 1989 edition of the second edition of the Oxford Dictionary. The second edition of this edition of the 1989 edition. Sorry, that sounded funny to me. So the word sets the world record, or the Guinness World Record, with an entry running 60,000 words, or 326,000 characters. And no other English word has ever come close. Which is kind of bizarre for me to think about. The word set has so many different meanings that is won a Guinness World Record. So just to name a few, set means to put something, to lay something, to stand something, to represent something, to mount something, to arrange something, to prepare something, to move something, to put something, to cause something, to decide on and announce something, to adjust something, or to fix something. And that's just me naming a few meanings for the word set. But apparently it has, like I said, over 430 different meanings for the single word of the in the English language of the word set, which I thought was pretty cool and quite bizarre. And I hope you enjoyed finding out about too. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to episode 17 of the More You Know Mondays, where I talked about Queen Charlotte. And if there is anything that you didn't feel like you have learned about Queen Charlotte, please do not hesitate to send us a message at myopinionmeans@gmail.com, or find us and follow us on social media, on all social media platforms at myopinionmeans, and just drop us a DM and we will get back to you. And you can also email or drop questions, and I can give shout outs, or I don't know, if you've got things that you want me to look into, I'll look into them, because I'm always interested in random facts and sharing them with with people. It's one of my passions. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode like previous other episodes that you've listened to. And like I said, I'm calling this the end of the show. I'm signing out for another week. And until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. You take the Monday's motivations and affirmations from this episode and bring them forward into the rest of your week, keeping Monday motivations going throughout the week. And I will speak to you again next week. So, until then, peace and bye.